Deputy Tully, please.
Minister, I wish to raise the issue of boarding out regulations, which comes under the statutory instrument number 225/1993. And as the date suggests, these regulations first come into operation in 1993, and they allow for individuals or families to take care of elderly people in their own home. This is suitable for an older person who is not able to live independently or with family members of their own, and or does not want to live alone. Boarding out is not suitable for care. It's generally not suitable for people who need high levels of medical support. But it can reduce social isolation, and it makes use of family homes rather than expensive residential facilities. So it's therefore saving the state money, but at the same time fostering independence and well-being. Now, the regulations have not been updated since 1993. There was a review roughly maybe 10 to 12 years ago, but very little change was made. The provider is contracted by the HSE to provide care for elderly people in their own home. They can have up to 6 residents. The CHO decides on an amount that is paid to each provider each week, and then each resident also pays an amount also decided by the HSE. But the providers are asking that the regulations, which are in place now for 28 years and which have not been updated in over 12 years, be reviewed. That the weekly contribution from the HSE should be increased and standardised across CHO areas. That the amount paid by the older person also be standardised, and that the number of residents allowed per house should be increased, and that income tax concessions be updated. The care model is much more economical than the nursing home model, and older residents can stay in the community and live much more independent lives. And this form of supported housing option for the elderly is strongly supported by Alone, the charitable organisation for older people. Now, currently, what the HSE pay towards the care of residents can vary from €110 in one CHO area to €165 in another. The resident is asked to pay a fee which can vary from €140 in one CHO area, €180 in another. So where a problem arises is where you have residents from different CHO areas living in the same house but paying different amounts from their pension because they come from different CHO areas. Now, the provider is also receiving different amounts for each people in their care, again depending on which CHO area they come from. So I'm asking for the amount that the HSE pays towards each resident, and the amount that each resident is requested to pay towards their own care be standardised across all CHO areas in the interest of fairness. Also, the amount contributed by the HSE needs to increase. It has not increased in more than 12 years, and the cost of living has risen immensely in that time. And even if we look at in the last year in particular, the cost of food has certainly risen. I'm also asking you, Minister, to increase the number of residents from a maximum of 6 to 9. The taxation system needs to be amended to enable host families to avail of tax exemptions. I'm suggesting similar to those available under the Rent-a-Room scheme or foster care legislation. Similar schemes exist in the UK. A submission could be made to the Revenue Commissioners to enable host families to avail of the tax exemptions under a rent-a-room scheme. Now, I first contacted Minister Stephen Donnelly on this issue at the end of September last year, and he advised me to speak to Minister Mary Butler, who has responsibility for older people, which I did, and I emailed her the details. But I've had to pursue this issue on a regular basis, and I put forward all the proposals, and just after outlining to the Department of Health for the officials there to assess, and I haven't heard back from them. So I'm just wondering if the officials need more information or need to talk to people involved in this. I mean, that can be arranged. So I just sincerely hope that this statutory instrument can be examined and updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Tully. Minister Feehan, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ken Corla, and I'd like to thank Deputy Tully for raising this issue. And I know that Deputy is very interested in the boarding out scheme. Government is committed to supporting people to live in dignity and independence in their own homes and communities for as long as possible. And where this is not feasible, the health service supports access to quality long-term residential care where this is appropriate. We will continue to develop and improve health services in all regions of the country to meet this objective and to ensure quality and patient safety. The 1993 regulations provide a framework for the operation of a boarding out scheme, and the regulations include specific conditions relating to maintenance, care and welfare of an older person in a private house. The intention of the scheme was to provide social and personal care to older people who did not want to or were not able to live on their own but wanted to remain in their local community. Under the regulations, the HSE must be satisfied that the house is suitable and that the householder is fit to look after the person accessing the scheme. The householder must provide suitable and sufficient care, nutritious and various food, and the adequate attendance having regard to the needs of the person. The householder must also respect the privacy of the individual. Not more than 6 people can be boarded out in one house. The regulations also set out standards as to the suitability of the accommodation, cleanliness, safety and other related matters. The regulations provide that the HSE may pay to the householder an amount not exceeding half the weekly rate of the state pension, non-contributory which is payable at the time in respect of each person accessing the scheme. In addition, the person being boarded out must pay to the householder an amount which is agreed between the HSE, the householder and the individual themselves. It was not intended that the scheme would provide nursing or medical care beyond the levels normally provided in a person's own home. Those availing of the scheme require a level of social care which is delivered by people who are funded to provide this service through the scheme, together with contributions from the older person. The boarding out scheme has diminished over time and is now only available in a limited number of areas across the country. And according to the HSE, there are 17 boarding out facilities across 3 of the community health organisations. In 2017, the HSE completed a review of the scheme, which concluded that an expansion of the scheme was warranted. The last year has been a very challenging year for the health system in responding to the current pandemic, and this has highlighted the continuing importance of the need to support people, including our older population, to access the right care in the right place at the right time. The boarding out scheme facilitates older people to remain in their communities where they may otherwise be accommodated in residential care. It can also help to reduce social isolation. While the use of the boarding out scheme by the HSE has traditionally been small, there is value in exploring it further, and I am pleased to advise the House that my colleague Mary Butler, the Minister for Mental Health and Older People, has requested that officials in the Department consider this model of care and the regulations in context of our overall commitment to enhancing opportunities for older people to stay in their homes and communities for longer.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Tully.
Thank you, Concordia. Minister, I do welcome the fact that Minister Butler is going to have her officials consider this model of care and give it more consideration, and that an expansion is warranted. That is good news. However, the issues that I've outlined just need to be dealt with those who are currently providing the care. I mean, providers of boarding out facilities are currently working for less than the minimum wage. They're doing an immensely important job, helping our older generation to continue living in the community, but yet ensuring they've independence to do the things that they wish to do. Providers, as well as providing bed and meals, are often bringing people for appointments and collecting prescriptions, and at the moment cutting hair. The HSE does not promote this form of care, though. When I looked at the HSE website under services for older people, it's not mentioned, or if it is, it's well hidden. Nursing homes are there, but I couldn't find a reference to boarding out facilities. And Alone, as I mentioned, support this model of care in their report entitled Housing Choices for Older People in Ireland, Time for Action. It was produced in 2018. And they believe a demand for 750 could exist if the provision of this service was replicated across all CHO areas. I mean, obviously, regulation and monitoring would be required, and I think tax exemptions would be needed for providers to make this scheme more attractive. At the moment, or at that time, actually, I should say, there was only 51 people boarded out, but many people don't know of this facility, don't know that this exists. The average cost annually to the state for boarding out facilities can range between €8,000 and €9,000 per year. But nursing home care is in and around 50,000. So, I mean, these are approximate figures and, of course, differ from region to region, but the savings to the state could be in the region of €30,000 per person. And so I'm just wondering why it's not being promoted more. I appreciate it doesn't suit everybody, but there are many to whom it would. And so many older people are living at home without the proper supports to do so, and often end up in nursing homes because their health fails due to the inability to care for themselves. And I think if this option was available, it would avoid that. So boarding out, while it mightn't suit everyone, it could be an option that people should have at least to consider. Thank you.
Thank you for raising this important matter. Deputy Tully, Minister, to conclude, please.
Thanks, and I thank the Deputy once again for raising this issue. And our overriding objective is to support older people to live in dignity and independence in their own homes and communities for as long as possible. The continued enhancement of health and social care services delivery at both individual and community level is something the Government is committed to. Under Sláinte Care model, we are looking at a significant shift in our model of care towards one that is focused on prevention and early intervention, a model in which care will predominantly be provided at the lowest level of complexity in our local communities. It is important that we look at the boarding out scheme in this context, ensuring that it aligns with broad reforms such as the development of a statutory scheme for the financing and regulation of home support services. In addition, a reformed model of service delivery will be introduced to ensure the provision of home support in a transparent, equitable manner based on standard assessment of care needs. And I take into consideration that it is 20 years since a review was carried out. This review was carried out 3 years ago. We may need more of a review, but thank you very much for your concern and consideration.
Thank you very much.